5 stars, always 5 stars. That's what businessman Jonathan Phillips was thinking as he slid into the back seat of the silver Honda Accord. The Uber driver looked ordinary enough, middle-aged guy, baseball cap, friendly nod. "Airport, please," Phillips said, not knowing he'd just been kidnapped. But what his captors didn't know was that Mitchell O'Brien had spent 15 years as a Green Beret, and he'd never failed a hostage rescue mission. Welcome to True Stories Zone. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden courage, unexpected heroes, and the moment when a quiet Uber driver became someone's salvation, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button. Mitchell O'Brien woke up every morning at 5:30 a.m., his body still moving to the rhythm of 15 years of Special Forces training. At 52, he drove for Uber on the streets of Atlanta, spending an average of 12 hours a day behind the wheel of his silver Honda Accord, navigating traffic that would test the patience of saints. To his passengers, Mitch was just another driver, polite, punctual, and invisible in the way that service workers often become. He was exactly 5 feet 10 inches with graying brown hair kept short in a style that suggested military background to those who knew what to look for, but most people didn't. His dark brown eyes were alert and constantly scanning, a habit that had kept him alive through deployments in Afghanistan, Iraq, and places that didn't officially exist on any mission reports. His apartment in Midtown was sparse, a single bedroom, a kitchenette, and a living room that contained little more than a couch, a TV, and a small bookshelf. What drew attention, if anyone had been there to see it, was the framed photograph on the mantel, 12 men in desert camouflage, standing in front of a helicopter in what was clearly a combat zone. Mitch was in the center, 20 pounds heavier with muscle, 20 years younger, wearing the distinctive green beret that had defined the first half of his adult life. But that life was over now. After retiring from the Army in 2018, Mitch had struggled with the transition that claimed so many veterans. The corporate security jobs didn't appeal to him, too much sitting, too much politics, too little action. Construction work felt wrong after years of precision operations. Office work was out of the question. Driving for Uber provided something he needed: independence, human interaction, and the constant low-level awareness that came from navigating an urban environment. It wasn't the adrenaline rush of special operations, but it was honest work that allowed him to help people get where they needed to go safely. What his passengers didn't know was that every ride was a tactical assessment. Mitch automatically noted potential threats, escape routes, and anomalies in behavior that might indicate danger. It was exhausting sometimes, but it was also who he had become through years of training that couldn't be unlearned. The irony was that Atlanta's streets were probably safer because Mitchell O'Brien was driving them, even though nobody knew it. Tuesday evening in downtown Atlanta brought the usual mix of business travelers, tourists, and locals heading out for dinner or entertainment. Mitch had been driving since noon, collecting his steady stream of 5-star ratings from passengers who appreciated his quiet professionalism and spotless car. At 8:47 p.m., his phone chimed with a pickup request: Jonathan Phillips, pickup location at the Marriott downtown, destination Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. The fare estimate showed a solid $20 ride, exactly the kind of airport run that made night driving profitable. Mitch pulled up to the hotel's circular drive and sent the standard text: silver Honda Accord, outside main entrance. He watched through his mirrors as a man in an expensive suit emerged from the lobby, looked around briefly, then approached the car. Jonathan Phillips was exactly what Mitch expected from the pickup location and destination: mid-40s, well-dressed, carrying a leather briefcase and rolling a small suitcase. He moved with the hurried efficiency of someone accustomed to tight schedules and first-class travel. "Airport, please," Phillips said as he settled into the back seat, immediately pulling out his phone to check messages. "You got it," Mitch replied, pulling into traffic. "Which terminal?" "Delta, domestic." "No problem. Should have you there in about 25 minutes, depending on traffic." Phillips nodded absently, already absorbed in his phone. Mitch adjusted his mirrors and began the familiar route toward the airport, his attention split between navigation and the automatic threat assessment that had become second nature. That's when he noticed the black SUV. It had been behind them since they left the hotel, maintaining a consistent distance through 3 lane changes and 2 turns. In civilian life, it might have been coincidence. In Mitch's world, coincidences were dangerous assumptions. He made a test, an unnecessary lane change followed by a right turn that would add 2 minutes to their route but would force any surveillance to reveal itself. The black SUV followed. Mitch's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, his mind shifting into a state of heightened alertness that he hadn't felt since retirement. In the back seat, Phillips continued working on his phone, oblivious to the developing situation. "Sir," Mitch said quietly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer without looking around or changing your behavior." Phillips looked up, suddenly focused. "What's wrong? Are you expecting anyone to be following you? Business associates, security, anything like that? Following me?" "No, why would?" Phillips stopped, understanding dawning on his face. "Are we being followed?" "Possibly." Black SUV, 2 cars back. "Been with us since the hotel." Mitch's voice was calm, professional. "Any reason someone might want to intercept you before you catch your flight?" Phillips was quiet for a moment, and Mitch could see him thinking through possibilities in the rearview mirror. "I'm a federal prosecutor," Phillips said finally. "I've been working on a case involving organized crime. The trial starts next week." "What kind of organized crime?" "Human trafficking, money laundering, international connections. The kind of people who don't like federal prosecutors." Mitch nodded, his assessment of the situation crystallizing. "Mr. Phillips, I'm going to make another turn here. If that SUV follows us, we're going to need to change our plans." The SUV followed. "Change our plans how?" Phillips asked, his voice tight with growing concern. "We're not going to the airport," Mitch said simply. "We're going to handle this." What happened next unfolded with the precision of a military operation, but not the kind that favored the good guys. The black SUV accelerated suddenly, pulling alongside Mitch's Honda just as they approached a red light at a major intersection. 2 things happened simultaneously: the light turned red, forcing Mitch to stop, and the SUV's rear passenger door opened to reveal a man with a handgun pointed directly at Phillips. "Don't move, don't scream, don't do anything stupid," the gunman called through the open windows. "Mr. Phillips, you're coming with us." A second vehicle, a white van that Mitch hadn't noticed in his surveillance detection, pulled up behind them, blocking any retreat. 3 men got out, 2 from the van, 1 from the front of the SUV, all moving with the coordinated efficiency of a well-rehearsed plan. Philip started to reach for his phone, but the gunman's voice stopped him. "Hands where I can see them. Now." Mitch's mind was racing through options, calculating angles, assessing threats. 3 visible weapons, 4 men, civilian environment with potential for collateral damage, his passengers' safety paramount. The tactical situation was complex, but not impossible. "Mr. Phillips," Mitch said quietly, "when I tell you to get down, you get down below the seat and you stay there. Understand?" "What are you?" "Trust me. I've done this before." One of the men approached the driver's side door while the others maintained overwatch. "You," he said to Mitch, "out of the car. Now." Mitch slowly raised his hands, making eye contact with the man through the window. "Just a driver, man. Don't want any trouble. Smart. Get out slowly." Mitch opened his door and stepped out, his movements careful and controlled. To the kidnappers, he looked like exactly what they expected, a middle-aged Uber driver, scared and compliant. What they didn't see was the way he positioned himself to shield Phillips from 2 of the gunmen, or how his eyes catalogued every detail of their weapons, positions, and body language. "Mr. Phillips," the lead gunman called, "time to go. We're going to have a conversation about your upcoming testimony." "I'm not going anywhere," Phillips said, his voice shakier than he probably wanted. "Yeah, you are," the gunman replied. "The only question is whether your driver gets hurt in the process." That's when Mitchell O'Brien made the decision that would change everything. Actually, Mitch said conversationally, his hands still raised, I think we need to discuss the tactical situation here. The lead gunman looked at him with irritation. Shut up, old man. This doesn't concern you. See, that's where you're wrong, Mitch continued, his voice remaining calm and professional. Because you've just attempted to kidnap a federal prosecutor in my vehicle, which makes it very much my concern. One of the other gunmen laughed. What are you gonna do, file a complaint with Uber? Mitch smiled slightly. No. I'm going to give you one chance to walk away. After that, this becomes a tactical problem, and I'm very good at solving tactical problems. Listen, Gramps, the lead gunman said, stepping closer, unless you want to. He never finished the sentence. Mitch moved with the fluid precision of 15 years of special operations training. His left hand deflected the gunman's weapon while his right delivered a strike to the man's throat that dropped him instantly. Before the other gunman could react, Mitch had disarmed their leader and was using his body as a shield while directing suppressing fire at their positions. Get down, he shouted to Phillips, who dropped below the window line as instructed. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. The remaining gunmen, caught completely off guard by the transformation of a mild-mannered Uber driver into a tactical operator, scrambled for cover behind their vehicles. But Mitch was already moving, using the traffic and parked cars as concealment while he systematically neutralized each threat. The second gunman tried to circle around the Honda's rear, but found himself facing someone who had been trained in close-quarters combat by the best military instructors in the world. A short, violent encounter left him unconscious on the asphalt. The third gunman, realizing that his easy kidnapping had become a tactical nightmare, tried to retreat to the van. Mitch let him reach for the door handle before demonstrating why Green Berets were considered among the military's elite forces. The fourth gunman, seeing his entire team neutralized by someone he dismissed as irrelevant, dropped his weapon and raised his hands. Smart choice, Mitch said, breathing calmly despite having just conducted a close-quarters battle in downtown Atlanta traffic. The sound of sirens filled the air as Atlanta Police Department units responded to reports of gunfire at the intersection. Mitch had already secured all 4 suspects, using zip-tie restraints he kept in his car's emergency kit, a habit from his military days that had proven unexpectedly useful. Mr. Phillips, Mitch called, you can sit up now. Situation secure. Phillips slowly raised his head, looking around at the scene with the stunned expression of someone whose world had just been turned upside down. 4 armed men lay unconscious or restrained around the intersection, while his Uber driver stood calmly beside the car, looking like nothing particularly unusual had happened. Who the hell are you? Phillips asked. Mitchell O'Brien, retired Green Beret, Mitch replied. Sorry about the delay. We'll probably need to reschedule your flight. The first police units arrived with lights and sirens, officers emerging with weapons drawn until they assessed the scene and realized the threat had been neutralized. Detective Amanda Foster, a 15-year veteran of APD, approached Mitch with professional caution. Sir, I need you to identify yourself and explain what happened here. Mitch handed her his driver's license and concealed carry permit, then provided a concise tactical briefing that immediately identified him as someone with extensive law enforcement or military experience. These 4 suspects attempted to kidnap Mr. Phillips, who is a federal prosecutor. They used 2 vehicles in a coordinated operation, suggesting professional planning and organization. I neutralized the threat using non-lethal force and secured the suspects pending your arrival. Detective Foster studied Mitch's credentials, then looked at the scene, for suspects properly restrained, weapons secured, no collateral damage to civilian property or bystanders. Mr. O'Brien, what's your background? 15 years, U.S. Army Special Forces. Retired 2018. Foster nodded, pieces falling into place. Mr. Phillips, are you injured? No, Phillips said, still looking somewhat shell-shocked. He saved my life. They were going to kidnap me. And they would have succeeded, Foster observed, if they hadn't picked the wrong Uber driver. The investigation that followed revealed the scope of the organization behind the kidnapping attempt. The 4 suspects were part of a larger criminal network that had been monitoring Phillips's movements for weeks, planning to abduct him before his testimony could damage their trafficking operations. What they hadn't counted on was encountering someone with the skills and experience to turn their carefully planned operation into a tactical disaster. "Mr. O'Brien," Phillips said as they waited for FBI agents to arrive and take over the investigation, "I don't know how to thank you. If you hadn't been there, you would have handled it," Mitch replied. "People are tougher than they think when they have to be. But I wouldn't have. I'm a lawyer, not a soldier. I've never been in a situation like this." Mitch looked at the federal prosecutor, seeing someone who had dedicated his career to pursuing justice against dangerous criminals, even knowing the personal risks involved. "Mr. Phillips, you've been in dangerous situations every day for years. You just didn't know it. Walking into courtrooms, prosecuting organized crime, standing up to people who solve problems with violence, that takes a different kind of courage than what I did tonight." Phillips considered this. "Different how?" "I was trained for this." "You do it anyway, without training, because it's the right thing to do." "That's harder." FBI Special Agent Caroline Maxwell arrived 30 minutes later, bringing with her a team of agents and the authority to coordinate the investigation across state and federal jurisdictions. "Mr. O'Brien," she said after reviewing Detective Foster's report, "your actions tonight potentially saved a federal prosecutor's life and preserved crucial testimony in a major trafficking case. The Bureau would like to thank you." "Just doing what needed to be done," Mitch replied. "Actually," Agent Maxwell continued, "it was significantly more than that. Your tactical response was textbook perfect. Minimal force, maximum effectiveness, zero collateral damage in a complex urban environment. That's not luck, that's exceptional training and experience." She paused, studying Mitch's file. "Have you considered returning to law enforcement? The FBI has consulting positions for individuals with your background and demonstrated capabilities." 3 hours later, after statements had been taken and reports filed, Mitch found himself sitting in his Honda in the police station parking lot, thinking about Agent Maxwell's offer. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by the familiar post-operation calm that he remembered from his military days. His phone buzzed with Uber notifications, passengers requesting rides, the normal flow of Atlanta nightlife continuing around him. But something had changed tonight. For the first time since retirement, he'd felt useful in the way that only came from protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. Phillips approached the car, having been released after providing his statement to federal agents. "Mr. O'Brien, I still need to catch a flight. I know this sounds crazy after everything that's happened, but would you be willing to drive me to the airport?" Mitch smiled. "It's what I do." During the drive, Phillips was quiet for several minutes before speaking. "That FBI agent was right, you know. What you did tonight was extraordinary. Have you thought about her offer?" "Some," Mitch admitted. "But I'm not sure I'm ready to go back to that world full-time." "What if you didn't have to?" Mitch glanced in the rearview mirror. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe the world needs more Uber drivers who happen to be former Green Berets. Maybe protecting people doesn't always require a badge or a uniform." They drove in comfortable silence for several minutes, the city lights flowing past the windows. "Mr. Phillips," Mitch said as they pulled up to the Delta terminal, "be careful out there. People like you, prosecutors, judges, investigators, you're standing between decent people and some very dangerous individuals. That matters." Phillips gathered his briefcase and suitcase, then paused before getting out. "People like you matter too, Mr. O'Brien. The world needs protectors, whether they're wearing Green Berets or driving Uber." As Phillips disappeared into the terminal, Mitch sat in the pickup lane thinking about choices and second chances. His phone buzzed with another ride request, someone needed to get home safely. He accepted the request and pulled back into traffic, another anonymous driver on Atlanta's busy streets. But now he understood something he hadn't realized before. protection came in many forms, and sometimes the most important guardian was the one nobody saw coming. 6 months later, Mitchell O'Brien still drives for Uber on Atlanta's streets. His 5-star rating remains perfect, though his passengers sometimes notice an unusual alertness in the way he scans traffic and monitors his surroundings. What they don't know is that Agent Maxwell's offer led to a unique arrangement. Mitch consults part-time for the FBI's Atlanta field office, providing tactical training and operational support while maintaining his civilian cover as a ride-share driver. The trafficking organization behind the kidnapping attempt was dismantled through prosecutions led by Jonathan Phillips, whose testimony proved crucial in securing convictions against 17 defendants. Phillips sent Mitch a thank-you note after the trial concluded, along with an invitation to dinner that Mitch politely declined. But sometimes, late at night when the city's streets are quiet, Mitch thinks about the conversation they had during the drive to the airport. Phillips had been right. The world needs protectors in many forms, and sometimes the most effective guardian is the one who remains invisible until the moment when invisibility becomes action. The 4 men who attempted to kidnap a federal prosecutor learned that lesson the hard way. They discovered that assumptions about ordinary people can be dangerous, that service workers are often more than they appear, and that sometimes the most qualified person to handle a crisis is the one you least expect. Mitchell O'Brien continues to drive Atlanta's streets, carrying within himself the quiet knowledge that some skills never fade, some duties never end, and some protectors work best when they remain hidden until the moment when concealment becomes courage. Because sometimes the most important hero is the one you never see coming, riding the night shift in a silver Honda Accord, ready to remind the world that evil prospers only when good people do nothing, and some good people happen to be former Green Berets who know exactly what to do when nothing becomes something. So I ask you, have you ever encountered someone whose quiet competence suggested depths you never suspected? Someone whose ordinary appearance concealed extraordinary capabilities? Share their story in the comments, because heroes walk among us every day, and their stories deserve to be told. If this story moved you, subscribe to True Stories Zone. We're here to honor the hidden protectors, the invisible guardians, and the ordinary people who do extraordinary things when the moment demands it. Until next time, remember, respect the people who serve you, protect the vulnerable, and never forget that sometimes your Uber driver might be the most qualified person in the city to handle whatever crisis comes your way. The most important protection often comes from the least expected places, provided by people who've learned that true strength doesn't need to announce itself, it just needs to be ready when called upon.